You keep moving, but your life is not moving forward. You wake up tired. You go to work. You try your best to manage your money. And yet, at the end of every year, your bank account looks exactly the same. So what do? You assume your current plan is broken, and you decide to change direction. You switch jobs because you feel stuck. You drain your small savings account to try a new side hustle you saw online. You completely abandon your monthly budget after one stressful, expensive week. You think you are taking action. You think you are finally fixing your life, but every single time you panic and change direction, you pay a massive invisible penalty. I call this the friction of constant resetting. Society has conditioned the working class to believe that if you are struggling financially, you simply need to hustle harder. You are told to pivot, to adapt, to constantly look for the next big opportunity. But this hyperactive behavior is exactly what is keeping you trapped in the exact same place. Most ordinary hardworking people are not failing because they are lazy. They are not failing because they lack ambition or intelligence. They are failing because they react too often. They confuse the feeling of urgency with actual progress. They are running on a treadmill, burning all their energy just to feel like they are in control, but they are never actually moving forward. Today, we are going to look at why your desperate need to constantly fix your situation is actually resetting your financial progress back to absolute zero. We will explore why true lasting financial growth does not come from frantic daily action. Instead, it comes from the difficult, agonizing discipline of making a solid, boring decision and enduring the extreme psychological discomfort of leaving it alone. We live in an era that gives you constant, real-time access to your financial life. 20 years ago, if you wanted to know your bank balance, you had to keep a paper ledger or drive to an ATM. Today, you can check your checking account from your bed. You can look at your credit card debt while waiting in traffic. You can track your investments while standing in line for coffee. Because you can see the numbers constantly fluctuating, you feel an overwhelming psychological pressure to actively do something about them. This hyper-visibility creates what I call the trap of touching it too often. When money is tight, anxiety naturally disguises itself as productivity. You log into your banking applications every single day, somehow believing that monitoring your money is the same thing as managing it. You watch your balance drop after paying rent, and a wave of panic hits you. You feel like you need to immediately restructure your life. You manage to save a small buffer of $1,000. But the moment a sudden minor expense appears, like a car repair or a dental bill, it feels like a complete catastrophe. Instead of letting the emergency fund do its actual job, you panic. You look at your depleted account, conclude that saving money is useless because emergencies always happen, and you pull the rest of the money out. You completely change your financial approach because the reality of the middle phase feels entirely too slow and painful. This exact same anxiety destroys your earning power and your career trajectory. Imagine you start learning a new skill or taking a new career path to increase your income. For the first 3 months, it is highly motivating. You are reading books, taking courses, and feeling optimistic. But then inevitably, you hit the plateau. You are putting in the hours, but you are not seeing an immediate bump in your paycheck. Instead of pushing through the boredom and the friction, you convince yourself that you made the wrong choice. You start browsing job boards again. You pivot to a completely different industry, or you chase a new trending skill. Every single time you interrupt a process before it matures, you pay a reset penalty. You lose all the invisible momentum, all the foundational knowledge, and all the compounding effort you spent months building. You never hold on to one path long enough to actually become valuable or gain leverage in the marketplace. You are simply running in circles, endlessly starting over just to satisfy your brain's immediate need to feel productive. This constant, desperate need for control inevitably leads to the most expensive mistakes of your ordinary life. It leads to decisions driven entirely by emotional timing rather than logical timing. To understand why people stay trapped in a cycle of financial struggle, you have to look at how they make decisions under pressure. When you are exhausted from working 40 or 50 hours a week, dealing with a difficult boss, commuting through heavy traffic, and still struggling to pay your basic bills, your brain demands an immediate reward. You are running on empty, and your psychological defense mechanisms are completely broken down. This is exactly where panic spending begins. Let us look at a realistic Thursday evening. You have been bringing your lunch to work for a month to save money. You have been disciplined, but today was a terrible day. You feel undervalued and overworked. On your drive home, the deprivation suddenly feels completely unbearable. You do not just buy a $20 dinner to feel better. You go online and finance a $1,200 smartphone you do not need, or you walk into a dealership and sign an 84-month loan on a car that is far outside your budget. You do not make these purchases because they make logical financial sense. You make them because you want to artificially force a feeling of success right now. You are trying to buy instant relief from the emotional pain of your daily life. You let a temporary bad mood dictate a permanent financial commitment, completely ignoring the fact that you just signed away a massive portion of your future income. The exact same psychological mechanism also causes panic quitting. Imagine you are 8 months into a 24-month plan to aggressively pay down your credit card debt. You are making quiet, boring progress. Then a crisis hits. Your rent increases by $100 or your hours at work get cut. The stress floods your nervous system. In that moment of overwhelming frustration, you decide that trying to be responsible is a total waste of time. You think, I am never going to get ahead anyway, so why am I suffering? You abandon the long-term debt payoff plan entirely. You stop making the extra payments and go right back to your old expensive habits. You let a temporary emotional spike completely destroy almost a year of solid effort. You must understand that the modern economy is heavily optimized to profit from your emotional timing. The system harvests your impatience. Every time you roll over a loan to lower the payment, every time you make an impulsive purchase to self-soothe, and every time you abandon a strategy for a short-term fix, a bank or a corporation collects a fee, the financial machine extracts wealth from the hyperactive and the highly stressed, and it transfers that wealth to those who can sit quietly with their own discomfort. When you finally make a mature, solid financial choice, like setting up automatic transfers to an investment account, heavily paying down a high-interest loan, or committing to stay at a stable job to build a long-term track record, you naturally expect it to feel exciting. You expect a daily sense of victory, a feeling that your life is rapidly transforming. But the brutal reality of personal finance is exactly the opposite. A good financial decision is incredibly, almost painfully boring. For the first year or two, you do not see massive life-changing results. Your debt goes down slightly, but the monthly payment is still there. Your emergency fund grows, but it barely feels like it is outpacing the rising cost of your basic groceries. Your lifestyle is not upgraded. In fact, because you are being responsible, your lifestyle might feel more restricted than ever. You still cannot afford the nice restaurants, and you are still driving the exact same car. This period is what I call the critical middle phase, and this is exactly where the majority of working-class people completely destroy their own progress. Human beings are biologically wired to hate boredom. We are conditioned by television, social media, and modern culture to expect immediate fireworks when we do the right thing. We crave dopamine and visible daily motion. We want to see immediate proof that our sacrifices are paying off. When a financial plan is quiet, slow, and uneventful, your brain actively tricks you into thinking it is failing. You confuse a lack of excitement with a lack of progress. Because of this deep psychological discomfort, you begin to look for ways to interrupt the process. You decide that paying off the debt is taking entirely too long. So, you stop making the extra payments and use the accumulated cash to go on a vacation you think you deserve. You pull your hard-earned money out of a slow, reliable index fund to chase a risky, volatile trend a coworker told you about, hoping to skip the waiting line. You quit a perfectly good, stable job for a lateral move that pays $1 more an hour, but resets your seniority and reputation back to zero. You break your own functional routine simply to feel the rush of something happening. True capital builders and successful people understand a fundamental reality that the middle class usually ignores. Wealth is built by holding on during the boring phases. The most profitable thing you can do with a good decision is usually to leave it completely alone. If you plant a seed in the ground and then constantly dig it up every week to see if the roots are growing, you will kill the plant. The same exact law applies to your money, your skills, your long-term goals. If you interrupt a good habit before it has the time to naturally mature and compound, you mathematically guarantee that you will be starting from the bottom of the hill again next year. The magic does not happen in the starting or the stopping. The magic happens in the uninterrupted waiting. Society's conditioned us to view patience as a weak, passive trait. When we hear the word patience, we picture someone sitting quietly in a waiting room, avoiding hard work, and just hoping that life eventually gets better on its own. We associate it with people who lack ambition or drive. But in the context of building financial stability and escaping the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, this definition is completely backwards. Patience is not passive. It is a highly aggressive, deeply uncomfortable defensive strategy. Active patience is the difficult daily discipline of not opening your wallet when you are highly stressed. It is the invisible internal warfare you fight when you walk through a retail store. Feel the sudden, intense emotional urge to buy something just to make yourself feel better about a bad week, and consciously choose to walk out empty-handed. It means looking at your bank account, seeing that you finally have $3,000 saved, and refusing to spend it on a lifestyle upgrade, even when every fiber of your being feels like you have earned a reward. Active patience is also how you handle social pressure, which is one of the biggest destroyers of wealth. It is watching your peers, your friends, and your coworker buy new cars on 84-month loans and refusing to participate in the illusion. It means driving a 10-year-old vehicle that you own outright and actively swallowing your pride when you pull up next to someone driving a luxury car they cannot actually afford. That feeling of slight embarrassment, that feeling of falling behind, that is the emotional price of active patience. You are trading short-term ego for long-term leverage. Escaping your financial reality does not actually require a genius-level intellect, a massive salary, or a background in high finance. It requires emotional regulation, and that requires the rare ability to sit with your own discomfort, your own anxiety, and your own boredom without immediately reacting to relieve the tension. Think about what happens when an unexpected medical bill, a rent increase, or a tax notice arrives in the mail. The immediate reaction for most people is blind panic. They feel angry. They feel defeated. And because the psychological pressure is so heavy, they often make a second-worst financial decision. They might put the bill on a high-interest credit card without looking at other options. Or they might cancel their monthly investment contributions simply to make the problem disappear from their mind quickly. Active patience means creating a gap between the stimulus and your response. It means taking a breath, calculating your options, calling the hospital to negotiate a payment plan, and solving the problem logically rather than emotionally. The modern economy is an endless, highly engineered test of this restraint. Every advertisement, every social media post showing someone else's vacation, and every news headline is meticulously designed to trigger a reaction. They want you to feel inadequate. They want you to panic sell your investments. They want you to impulse buy. And they want you to constantly shift your attention. When you refuse to react, you cut off their leverage over you. The ability to hold steady is the ultimate filter in the modern world. It is the invisible wall that separates the people who eventually build permanent stability from those who stay trapped in a cycle of reaction and debt. Understanding the immense value of active patience is a critical shift in your mindset. But relying on your mindset alone is extremely dangerous. When you are tired, stressed, and overworked, your willpower will inevitably fail you. Think about a typical Thursday evening. After dealing with a demanding manager, surviving a long commute, and walking into a noisy household, your mental battery is completely drained. You simply do not have the cognitive energy left to fight off a well-designed marketing campaign or a sudden wave of financial panic. You cannot rely on pure mental strength to stop yourself from reacting impulsively. If the money is easily accessible and the decision is easy to make, your stressed brain will take the path of least resistance. Instead, you must build structural physical barriers between your emotions and your money. I call this the decision distance protocol. It is a set of rigid, non-negotiable rules designed to protect your long-term goals from your own temporary exhaustion. Step 1 is implementing a strict 72-hour rule for any non-S survival financial decision. If you feel the sudden, intense urge to quit your job, buy an expensive piece of technology, sign a lease for a more expensive apartment, or completely change your long-term investment strategy, you must wait exactly 72 hours before taking any actual action. You are not telling yourself that you cannot make the change. You are simply forcing a mandatory delay. This works because adrenaline, anger, and frustration have a very short half-life in the human body. If a client disrespects you on Tuesday afternoon, your brain will scream at you to quit, drain your savings, and start a risky new business immediately. It feels like a matter of absolute survival. You might also feel the urge to go out and put a $1,000 vacation on a credit card just to feel better. But if you force yourself to wait until Friday, that emotional peak will have faded. The logical reality of needing a steady paycheck or the reality of high interest rates will become clear again. Distance kills emotional mistakes. Step 2 is to aggressively automate the boring fundamentals of your financial life. Never trust your future self to manually transfer money into a savings account or pay extra on your debt at the end of the month. Manual saving is a trap. By the end of the month, you will look at that leftover money, and your exhausted brain will easily find a dozen perfectly reasonable excuses to spend it. You will tell yourself that you worked hard and you deserve a reward. Instead, you must set up automatic transfers for the exact morning your paycheck arrives. The money must move to your emergency fund or your debt payoff account before you even wake up and look at your phone.